Insulin. As we know that certain tissues like adipose tissue and muscle, they are dependent on insulin for their glucose uptake via GLUT4 transporter. And cells of liver and pancreatic cells, they are independent. They are not dependent on insulin for their glucose uptake. So besides liver and pancreatic islet cells, the other tissues which are not sensitive to insulin for glucose uptake are RBCs, cells of nervous system, intestinal mucosa, renal tubule, and cornea. These all cells are independent. They are not dependent on insulin for their glucose uptake. Now, what are the factors which give rise to insulin secretion? Besides glucose, glucose is the primary stimulus for insulin secretion. So besides glucose, the other factors, that's increased level of glucose. Besides increased level of glucose, the other factors which give rise to insulin secretion are amino acids and gastrointestinal peptide hormones. See, following a protein meal, there will be transient rise in amino acids, example arginine, and this increase in amino acid will further enhance secretion of insulin. Amino acids and even fatty acids, they also have a similar effect. That is, increased level of fatty acid, it will enhance insulin secretion. Third factor is gastrointestinal peptide hormones. Following a meal, there will be release of hormones like from the small intestine, there will be release of hormones like glucagon-like peptide and gastric inhibitory polypeptide. These peptides will be released from small intestine following food ingestion, and both these peptides will enhance insulin secretion by they will increase the sensitivity of glucose. They will increase the sensitivity of beta cells to glucose, thus enhancing insulin secretion. So the three factors which enhance insulin secretion are increased level of glucose concentration, amino acids, even fatty acids, amino acids and fatty acids, and gastrointestinal peptide hormones. And the factors which decrease insulin secretion are scarcity of dietary fuels, that is lack of diet, and in periods of physiological stress. Because in response to physiological stress like infection, hypoxia, fear, vigorous exercise, in response to all these stimulus, there is secretion of catecholamines, that is epinephrine and norepinephrine. And this epinephrine and norepinephrine will prevent insulin secretion. They will decrease insulin secretion, thus preventing hypoglycemia in the physiological stress condition. So the factors which give rise to decreased insulin secretion are number one, scarcity of dietary fuels, and number two is in periods of physiological stress, there will be rise of catecholamines, that is epinephrine and norepinephrine, and these epinephrine and norepinephrine further will decrease insulin secretion, thus preventing hypoglycemia. So the factors which increase insulin secretion are increased glucose concentration, number one, amino acids, fatty acids, and gastrointestinal peptide hormones. And the factors which decrease insulin secretion are lack of dietary fuel and physiological stress. This is the figure which is showing the factors responsible for increase and decrease insulin secretion. So you can see here glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, and gastrointestinal peptides. So these are the factors which increase insulin secretion. Factor which decrease is lack of diet and epinephrine. It decreases insulin secretion. Now coming to the next hormone, that is glucagon. It is secreted from alpha cells of pancreas in response to low blood glucose concentration. So this low blood glucose concentration, it is the primary stimulus for glucagon secretion. The other factors responsible for enhanced glucagon secretion are amino acids. That is, following the protein meal, there will be rise in amino acids, and these amino acids will further stimulate secretion of glucagon that prevents hypoglycemia, because as we know that protein ingestion also increases. Protein ingestion leads to rise in amino acid, and that also enhances insulin secretion. So if only insulin is secreted, it will give rise to hypoglycemia. So this secretion of glucagon, it prevents hypoglycemia that would otherwise occur if only insulin was secreted in response to rise in amino acids. So after ingestion of protein, there will be rise in amino acid, which will increase secretion of glucagon, thus preventing hypoglycemia. And catecholamines. As I told you that in response to stressful stimuli, there will be release of catecholamines, that is epinephrine and norepinephrine. They will inhibit insulin secretion, and they will enhance secretion of glucagon. So the three factors giving rise to glucagon, enhanced glucagon secretion are low blood glucose concentration, the primary stimulus, amino acids, and catecholamines. And the factor which decreases glucagon secretion is elevated blood glucose concentration and insulin. So both of these factors, that is elevated blood glucose concentration and insulin, they will decrease glucagon secretion. And both these substances will increase following either glucose ingestion or carbohydrate rich meal. You can look here in the image, that is insulin and glucose. They are decreasing glucose, that is high concentration of glucose, and insulin. They are inhibiting glucagon secretion, and epinephrine, amino acids, and low glucose concentration, they are enhancing glucagon secretion. So the summary is that amino acid, they will increase secretion of both insulin as well as glucagon, whereas increased concentration of glucose will increase the secretion of insulin but decrease the secretion of glucagon. And during physiological stress, regardless of the concentration of blood glucose, whatever may be the concentration of blood glucose during physiological stress, only glucagon will be secreted and insulin secretion will be inhibited, thus preventing hypoglycemia. So these are the factors which give rise to enhanced secretion of glucagon and insulin. Now come to the metabolic effects of glucagon. Carbohydrate metabolism. Glucagon, it enhances glycogenolysis in liver. It decreases glycogenesis in liver. Increases glycogenolysis, this we have done in regulation of glycogenolysis pathway also. That is glucagon, it via glucagon receptor, it will stimulate, it will activate enzyme adenyl cyclase. This activated adenyl cyclase will form cyclic AMP from ATP. This increased concentration of cyclic AMP further will activate cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase. And this activated cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase will phosphorylate and activate enzyme phosphorylase kinase. Now this activated phosphorylase kinase will finally phosphorylate and activate enzyme glycogen phosphorylase, which is the regulatory enzyme of glycogenolysis. Thus, glucagon, it enhances glycogenolysis in liver. It decreases glycogenesis. Mechanism, cascade of reactions is same. The only difference is that it phosphorylates this enzyme glycogen synthase, and while phosphorylating, this enzyme gets converted to its inactive form. Thus, glycogen synthase, it's phosphorylated and converted to its inactive form by action of glucagon, thus decreasing the pathway of glycogenesis. So glucagon stimulates glycogenolysis and it inhibits pathway of glycogenesis. However, it does not have any effect on glycogenolysis in muscle, because glycogenolysis in muscle is not directly connected with the blood glucose level. As we know that end product of muscle glycogenolysis is glucose 6-phosphate and not free glucose due to deficiency of enzyme glucose 6-phosphatase. Thus, and we know that the effect of glucagon is to increase the blood glucose concentration. Since free glucose is not formed via muscle glycogenolysis, so it does not have any impact on glycogenolysis in muscle. It only activates glycogenolysis in liver and decreases glycogenesis in liver. No effect on glycogenolysis in muscle. Now about gluconeogenesis and glycolysis, it increases gluconeogenesis and decreases glycolysis. How does it increase gluconeogenesis? This all we have done in regulation of gluconeogenesis. It is done by different type of mechanisms. Different mechanisms. Number one is it induces the synthesis of enzymes of gluconeogenesis, the key enzymes of gluconeogenesis, that is pyruvate carboxylase, phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase, and glucose 6-phosphatase. All the three enzymes, they are induced by glucagon. So it represses the enzymes of glycolysis, that is glucokinase, phosphofructokinase 1, and pyruvate kinase, thus decreasing glycolysis. Secondly, it phosphorylates the bifunctional enzyme glucagon via cyclic AMP. It phosphorylates the bifunctional enzyme via cyclic AMP only, thus activating fructose 2,6-bisphosphatase component and inactivating the component phosphofructokinase 2. And when this is inactivated, phosphofructokinase 2, so concentration of fructose 2,6-bisphosphate is decreased. When concentration of fructose 2,6-bisphosphate is decreased, it will further cause inactivation of phosphofructokinase 1, or we can say deactivation of phosphofructokinase 1 and disinhibition of fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase, thus decreasing glycolysis and increasing gluconeogenesis. Thirdly, glucagon via cyclic AMP, it phosphorylates and inactivates enzyme pyruvate kinase, thus decreasing glycolysis. So these are the mechanisms by which it decreases glycolysis and it increases gluconeogenesis. Number one, induces the synthesis of key enzymes of gluconeogenesis, PC, PEP-CK, and glucose 6-phosphatase, represses the enzymes of glucokinase, enzymes of glycolysis, that is glucokinase, phosphofructokinase 1, and pyruvate kinase. Secondly, it phosphorylates the bifunctional enzyme via cyclic AMP, thus activating the fructose 2,6-bisphosphatase component and inactivating phosphofructokinase 2, thus decreasing the concentration of fructose 2,6-bisphosphate, which further deactivates PFK1 and disinhibits phosphocructose 1,6-bisphosphatase, thus decreasing glycolysis and increasing gluconeogenesis. Third is it inhibits glycolysis by phosphorylating and inactivating pyruvate kinase. So glycolysis is decreased. So we can see that by increasing glycogenolysis and increasing gluconeogenesis, it finally what it does, it increases the blood glucose level, and by inhibiting glycogenesis and glycolysis, it is maintaining, it is increasing the blood glucose level. So the function of glucagon is to increase blood glucose concentration. Second effect on lipid metabolism, it increases lipolysis. Hormone sensitive lipase, this is enzyme which breaks down triacylglycerol to glycerol and free fatty acids. Now this enzyme, hormone sensitive lipase, it is phosphorylated and activated by cyclic AMP with effect of glucagon. Glucagon via cyclic AMP activates cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase and phosphorylates and activates this enzyme, hormone sensitive lipase, which breaks down triacylglycerol or triglyceride to glycerol and free fatty acids. Thus, we can say glucagon enhances lipolysis. So now these two products, glycerol and free fatty acids, they both will ultimately cause increased blood glucose level. How? See, glycerol, we know that glycerol is one of the substrate of gluconeogenesis. There are 4 substrates of gluconeogenesis: propionate, amino acid, lactate, and glycerol. So this glycerol formed in adipose tissue, it will enter blood, and in blood, it is from blood, it is taken up by liver or kidney and gets converted back to glucose. So glycerol forms glucose. Secondly, these free fatty acids, which are formed in adipose tissue, they enter blood. From blood taken up by liver. In liver, it undergoes beta oxidation. In beta oxidation, free fatty acids forms acetyl coenzyme A. The end product of beta oxidation of even chain fatty acids is acetyl coenzyme A along with generation of ATP. So this acetyl coenzyme A, which is formed, it inhibits glycolysis and activates gluconeogenesis by inhibiting enzyme PDH and by activating enzyme pyruvate carboxylase, which is the gluconeogenic enzyme. Thus, it enhances gluconeogenesis and inhibits glycolysis. And ATP, which is also formed in beta oxidation, it is also inhibiting glycolysis by inhibiting enzyme PDH and PFK1. So it enhances lipolysis, and by enhancing lipolysis, ultimately it is increasing the blood glucose concentration. Next function of glucagon on lipid metabolism is increases ketogenesis in liver. Now, how does it increase ketogenesis in liver? See, there is increased lipolysis in adipose tissue. As a result of increased lipolysis, increased free fatty acids are formed. Increased free fatty acids undergo beta oxidation, and this increased beta oxidation forms increased acetyl coenzyme A. As I told you, increase this acetyl coenzyme A, it inhibits PDH enzyme and activates PC enzyme. PC enzyme, pyruvate carboxylase, which is a gluconeogenic enzyme. PDH enzyme, which converts pyruvate to acetyl coenzyme A, thus stimulating gluconeogenesis and inhibiting glycolysis. Now, once PC is stimulated, pyruvate gets converted to oxaloacetate in presence of this PC. So pyruvate gets converted to oxaloacetate. Oxaloacetate forms malate. Malate comes out of mitochondria. In cytosol, malate forms phosphoenol pyruvate, ultimately forms glucose. So this oxaloacetate, it forms glucose by gluconeogenesis pathway. So major amount of this oxaloacetate forms glucose, and only less amount of oxaloacetate is available to condense with this acetyl coenzyme A to form citrate and further form intermediates of TCA cycle. So less amount of oxaloacetate is available to combine with acetyl coenzyme A to form citrate and other intermediates of TCA cycle. So the remaining amount of acetyl coenzyme A, since this acetyl coenzyme A is formed in increased amount due to increased beta oxidation of increased free fatty acids. So this acetyl coenzyme A, which is formed in excess, this excess amount of acetyl coenzyme A then enters in the pathway of ketogenesis and forms ketone body synthesis. Thus, increased amount of ketone bodies are formed in liver, which is called as ketogenesis. Thus, there is increased ketogenesis in response to glucagon. I am repeating this once again. In response to glucagon, there is increased lipolysis. Increased lipolysis leads to increased formation of free fatty acids. Free fatty acids undergo beta oxidation and form increased amount of acetyl coenzyme A. The effect of acetyl coenzyme A is it inhibits PDH enzyme, which converts pyruvate to acetyl coenzyme A, and activates enzyme pyruvate carboxylase, which converts pyruvate to oxaloacetate. This oxaloacetate then forms glucose by gluconeogenesis. Major portion of oxaloacetate is converted to glucose, and only a small portion of oxaloacetate combines with acetyl coenzyme A to form citrate and other intermediates of TCA cycle. But since this acetyl coenzyme A is formed in increased amount, the acetyl coenzyme A, the surplus acetyl coenzyme A will enter the ketogenesis pathway to form ketone bodies. Thus, increased ketogenesis in liver occurs in response to glucagon. And third effect on lipid metabolism, it decreases lipogenesis. And how does it decrease lipogenesis? By phosphorylating and inactivating the enzyme acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase. Lipids are formed from glucose. Glucose forms pyruvate by glycolysis. Pyruvate by oxidative decarboxylation forms acetyl coenzyme A. Acetyl coenzyme A is a substrate for this fatty acids. The first step in formation of fatty acids is acetyl coenzyme A gets converted to this malonyl coenzyme A in presence of enzyme acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase. This is a regulatory enzyme for fatty acid synthesis. So glucagon via cyclic AMP, it phosphorylates and inactivates this enzyme acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase. So malonyl coenzyme is not formed. So once malonyl coenzyme is not formed, so fatty acids are not formed. Thus, it decreases lipogenesis. First step in formation of fatty acid is acetyl coenzyme A gets converted to malonyl coenzyme A, and then malonyl coenzyme A in presence of enzyme fatty acid synthase converts into fatty acids. But since this enzyme is phosphorylated and inactivated by glucagon via cyclic AMP, thus decreasing the concentration of this malonyl coenzyme A, and once malonyl coenzyme A is decreased, so fatty acids will be, synthesis of fatty acids will be decreased, thus decreases lipogenesis. So these were the three implications of glucagon on lipid metabolism. Number one was it increases lipolysis by phosphorylating and activating enzyme hormone sensitive lipase. It decreases lipogenesis by phosphorylating and inactivating enzyme acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase. And third one was increases ketogenesis. Decreased acetyl coenzyme which is formed is used for ketone body synthesis, since oxaloacetate, less amount of oxaloacetate is available to condense with this acetyl coenzyme A. So the major portion of this acetyl coenzyme A enters the ketogenesis pathway to form ketone bodies. So this was the implication of glucagon on lipid metabolism. Third comes protein metabolism. Glucagon, it increases the uptake of amino acids in liver, and these amino acids, they are supplied by muscle. So increased uptake of amino acids in liver, and these amino acids will form glucose by gluconeogenesis. So on protein metabolism, the impact of glucagon is increased uptake of amino acids by liver, and these amino acids are supplied by muscle. Once amino acids are taken up by liver, they are converted to glucose by gluconeogenesis. So this finishes the effect of glucagon on carbohydrate, lipid, and protein metabolism. And we have seen that by having effects on all these metabolism, ultimately the function of glucagon is to enhance the blood glucose concentration. Third comes hormone epinephrine. Epinephrine, which is secreted in response to stressful stimuli, that's fear, excitement, hypoxia, infection, hypoglycemia, from adrenal medulla. The action of epinephrine is almost similar to glucagon. That is, it increases glycogenolysis in liver and muscle both. The glucagon was enhancing glycogenolysis only in liver. It does not have any effect on muscle glycogenolysis. But epinephrine, it increases glycogenolysis both in liver and muscle by the same mechanism, that is by activating the enzyme glycogen phosphorylase via cyclic AMP. And it inhibits glycogenesis in liver and muscle again by phosphorylating and inactivating enzyme glycogen synthase via cyclic AMP. Glycogen synthase, which is the regulatory enzyme of glycogenesis, glycogen phosphorylase, which is the regulatory enzyme of glycogenolysis. Then second impact on carbohydrate metabolism is it increases gluconeogenesis and decreases glycolysis. How does it increase gluconeogenesis? Epinephrine, it also induces the synthesis of key enzymes of gluconeogenesis, that is pyruvate carboxylase, phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase, and glucose 6-phosphatase. Thus, it increases gluconeogenesis by inducing the key enzymes. Second impact is same, that is by phosphorylating the bifunction enzyme, thus converting fructose 2,6-bisphosphatase to its active form and phosphofructokinase 2 to its inactive form, decreasing the concentration of fructose 2,6-bisphosphatase, decreasing the concentration of fructose 2,6-bisphosphate, ultimately increasing gluconeogenesis and decreasing glycolysis. And epinephrine, the impact of epinephrine on glycolysis is also by phosphorylating and inactivating the enzyme pyruvate kinase, thus decreasing glycolysis. So this was the impact of epinephrine on carbohydrate metabolism. Second comes lipid metabolism. It increases lipolysis, same mechanism, by phosphorylating and activating this enzyme hormone sensitive lipase, it enhances lipolysis. Decreases lipogenesis by phosphorylating and inactivating enzyme acetyl coenzyme carboxylase via cyclic AMP. And another effect of epinephrine on this tissues, adipose tissue and muscle, is also that since it decreases insulin secretion, epinephrine, it decreases insulin secretion, and since these tissues, that is adipose tissue and muscle, they are dependent on insulin for their glucose uptake via GLUT4 transporter. So since insulin secretion is decreased, so uptake of glucose is also decreased in these tissues, adipose tissue as well as muscle. So it decreases the uptake of glucose in adipose tissue and muscle. Next comes glucocorticoids. They are secreted from adrenal cortex and also in an unregulated manner from adipose tissue, and their function is elevate the blood glucose level. Now, what are the actions of glucocorticoid? It also increases gluconeogenesis by two mechanisms. See, its function in gluconeogenesis induces the key enzymes of gluconeogenesis, that is pyruvate carboxylase, phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase, and glucose 6-phosphatase. These three enzymes are also induced by these glucocorticoids. The second mechanism is induces transaminase enzyme, and we know that the function of transaminase enzyme is that it combines with one amino acid and one keto acid to form another amino acid and another keto acid. So this amino acid via transaminase enzyme gets converted to their respective keto acids. So by inducing the transaminase enzyme, there's increased catabolism of this amino acids. This hepatic amino acids, they are converted to their respective keto acid in presence of transaminase enzyme. And then this keto acid, they form glucose by gluconeogenesis. So by inducing the transaminase enzyme, the hepatic amino acids, they are converted to their respective keto acids. We know that this amino acid, they are source of glucose. They form glucose by gluconeogenesis. So by transaminase enzyme, hepatic amino acid gets converted to the respective keto acids, and then this respective keto acid, they form glucose by gluconeogenesis. So by both these mechanisms, glucocorticoids is ultimately increasing the level of blood glucose. Then second effect is that it inhibits the utilization of glucose in extrahepatic tissues. Since utilization of glucose is decreased in extrahepatic tissues, so in blood glucose, more glucose will remain in blood, thus increasing blood glucose concentration. Thirdly, it increases lipolysis. See, in lipolysis, it again enhances hormone sensitive lipase. It stimulates the enzyme hormone sensitive lipase, thus enhancing lipolysis. So this were the effect of glucocorticoids on different metabolism. Next comes anterior pituitary hormones. Anterior pituitary gland, it secrete hormones that again tend to elevate the blood glucose concentration. For example, ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, and growth hormone. Both of these hormones, they ultimately increase the blood glucose concentration. The function of ACTH is it increases the synthesis and release of glucocorticoids. And we already know that glucocorticoids, they enhance blood glucose concentration. So by increasing the synthesis and secretion of these glucocorticoids, ACTH is also increasing the blood glucose concentration. Second comes the growth hormone. Growth hormone, it decreases uptake of glucose in muscle. If uptake of glucose in muscle is decreased, so more glucose will remain in blood, again enhancing the blood glucose concentration. By increasing lipolysis also, that is, it also stimulates the enzyme hormone sensitive lipase, thus increasing lipolysis. So by increasing lipolysis also, blood glucose concentration is increased, because we know that end product of lipolysis is free fatty acids and glycerol. Free fatty acids, they ultimately promote gluconeogenesis, and glycerol is source of glucose. By gluconeogenesis, glycerol is converted to glucose. So by increasing lipolysis also, they are enhancing the blood glucose concentration. Next comes thyroid hormone. This also elevates blood glucose concentration by increasing glycogenolysis, increasing gluconeogenesis, and increasing lipolysis. So by increasing all these metabolic pathways, ultimately, thyroid hormones are elevating blood glucose concentration. This finishes regulation of blood glucose.